Welcome to the Geeky Nerdy Techie Q&A podcast. My name's Shane. We're back. This is episode 3. If you enjoy this, drop a thumbs up. I do appreciate it. Thank you to everyone who's left kind words on the previous podcasts and topics for discussion as well. I always love seeing them in the comment section. And this particular question is enough for one entire episode. And I'll explain why as we get through this, because it's quite an involved question, but I love it. And it's from Human's channel. So thank you for the question, mate. He says, while we know you review and love gear, as we all do, you got that right. What advice would you give to the creative side of us that gets excited by the potential of the gear? What's been your balancing act in relation to gas and creativity? What's been a breakthrough for you, even if it's something as simple as scheduling or a mindset shift? It's hard to say. That's a great question. This is a fully loaded question that I'm going to give a fully loaded answer to. Let's break this question down. I'm going to start by talking about the potential of the gear, which I think is something everybody thinks about if they're planning on upgrading to the next camera. And the great news is basically everything now is good. So if you're upgrading, you're going to get benefits in some ways and drawbacks in others from what you most likely already have, unless you've got something that's really quite old. Say, for example, you're going from like a GH4 to a GH7. It's a huge difference. It's a massive difference. If you're going from a Lumix, S1H to something like the S1R Mark II, technically there's a huge difference there. There's trade-offs though, right? You've got one camera that's built rock solid and doesn't overheat and has, great image quality, and that's been the S1H. But if you go to the new one, you've got 4K at 120 frames per second, 8K, but the camera overheats, right? So there's trade-offs there. The net end result won't be any better or worse on either camera at the end of the day. So you've just got to weigh up what it is that you like. Do you need autofocus? Do you need this or that, right? So the potential of the gear is what you need it to be. Let me share with you a couple of personal examples of when I've looked into gear, when I've purchased it, and what the payoff was at the end of the day, because that's the most important thing. So I went to Hawaii a few years back to shoot a series of videos, and I took the 12 to 35mm f2.8 zoom lens with me. But before that, I didn't own it. I wanted it specifically for that project. So not only did I invest my own money into that lens, I paid retail for it here in Australia, I used it on something that was scheduled in, and the payoff was I completed everything I wanted to complete, and it was used for that particular task. A lot of people may buy gear and they just have it sitting around. And it all comes down to what you aspire to do at the end of the day. I'm not saying that my use case is better or worse than anybody else's out there, but I think these 3 steps are important. If you invest into something, you book something in and complete the project. It doesn't mean you have to go somewhere to complete the project or to shoot something. You shoot something at home. This is completing the project. I had an idea, which was this question, the podcast. While I haven't invested anything into it right now, financially, I'm completing the project, and completing the project is the most satisfying thing. It makes you feel like the thing that you purchased is actually getting used. And the more you use something, the more you appreciate it. The 12 to 35s are now 2 of my favorite lenses. I got the Leica and just the Lumix G1, the version 2. And these are killer. They're really cool lenses. And I don't plan on getting rid of them because I now know exactly where these shine and how they can be used. And this is like my number 1 micro 4/3 lens anytime I'm outside, because it's just super versatile. So my suggestion is, if you're going through this whole gas thing, you need to justify the purchase and have a goal in mind, especially the end goal. Where even if that's a little cloudy and hey, maybe you want to shoot a documentary or a short film, then at least you've got that in the back of your mind and you can start taking steps towards it. I'm going to give you another example of when I basically went over from micro 4/3 to full frame. I ended up with a Sony FX3 and A7S3. I sold a whole bunch of stuff. It cost me a fortune. I had a couple of good months, so I was like, all right, if I'm going to do this, I have to do it now. And I had another camera which was overheating to no end from Sony, so I took that back and I ended up sort of upgrading the second camera for the B cam as the A7S3. Both killer cameras, just amazing results. I wanted cameras that would up my production quality for doing the same thing that I did in previous years with other gear, but I also wanted excellent autofocus. So I made the commitment to buy the gear, book 7 or 8 different shops I could visit around the coast of Florida. It was actually more than that, but due to unforeseen issues, we could only do as many as we could do. And then I actually completed all of those projects. And that was really fulfilling. And then I used the cameras all the time for YouTube and all that kind of stuff as well, up until I moved them on. So these things get used. If they're not getting used, you feel like you might have blown your dough, which means, you've kind of wasted your money. So again, this was a clear decision to buy something based on the fact I needed tools where I could hand one of these cameras off to Rhiannon, and she didn't have to worry about autofocus like we did on the Micro Four Thirds cameras back in the day, right? So you buy the right tool for the job, and being in unpredictable environments when it came to lighting, the full frame stuff definitely gave me a better sense of production quality for those particular jobs versus the tools that were at our disposal at that particular time. So yeah, these were all factors in deciding to buy something, scheduling and everything, which was a huge investment. Like, we paid to go overseas essentially. All the hotels, and it probably cost me 20 grand. But at the end of it, I had all of the jobs completed, and that gave me a sense of fulfillment, and it was done. While there's nothing inherently bad about wanting to own the next camera that comes out or anything like that, I think it's more important to focus on creating stuff that's meaningful for you personally, and that's what I try to do. I balance a mix of reviews, and I also make a whole lot of content, and I make a whole lot of videos that are passion projects for me, much like that Guitar Search Saturday series I do on my other channel, where I visit guitar shops all around the world on my own dime. I love using the gear that I've got to produce things that I love, and those are great examples of things where I get to do what I like and use the gear accordingly, and it sort of complements each other. If you love using your camera and you've got an end goal in mind, you can create stuff that's just as or more meaningful. Now, cameras can inspire you to create. I remember when I got the Sony FX3, I was absolutely stunned and blown away by the autofocus, the low light performance, and the end result. Such a beautiful looking sensor on that camera, and we shot a short film with it. It was just that good that I thought, man, I'm going to use this to create a cheesy little Halloween short film. Now, while I'm not shooting blockbuster films or anything like that, doing documentaries or doing run and gun YouTube filmmaking, when you're in a situation where you're interviewing people, you're shooting B-roll, there's a story, you're looking at the suburb or the location of the shoot, all of these things are very filmmaker-esque. So don't listen to people who think that just because you do YouTube, you're not a filmmaker. If you're doing anything out of your house, you're a filmmaker. I could argue too that you could do a lot of things from your house that would make you a filmmaker. What I can tell you is this: if you have an end product at the end of the day, that makes you one step ahead of all the people that just collect gear or talk about gear or complain about sensor size or whatever the case may be, right? All of that stuff doesn't matter. Thinking about how far camera tech has come, even over sort of like the last 4 or 5 years, it's crazy. You can't buy a bad camera. The GH7, the G9 Mark II, Sony FX3, FX30, A7S III, the new FX2 will work for somebody's use case. They're all good. It doesn't really matter what you get as long as it's reliable. And for me personally, anytime I'm looking at upgrading now, it has to tick that reliability box first and foremost. If it doesn't tick the reliability box, I'm not going to buy it. Why would I upgrade to a camera that may give me higher resolutions but doesn't let me record for more than 10 minutes outside on a hot day? For me personally, that's just not a smart investment. So I'm always thinking about the things that work best for me. My travel kit is very different to my studio kit, which is very different to my multi-camera kit. So yeah, you got to think about all these things anytime you want to do anything creative, because the gear does tie in with the creative process. But I'm going to also say this, I shot a documentary years ago, one of my first ones, using, I think they were Canon XA15s or AX15s or something like that. And they were pretty decent camcorders, but the image quality was nowhere near as nice as what you would find from even like a Lumix G85 or G7 with a prime lens. It was fine and no one complained about it, but you use what you can at the time. So don't let the gear thing sway you from getting started. And if you've got any camera from the last few years up until mid 2025, you're going to be able to create something great. So that's my thoughts here when it comes to GAS, or gear acquisition syndrome, versus the creative side. So let's move on. All right, let's talk about the second part of this question, was what has been a breakthrough moment for me personally when it comes to something as simple as scheduling or a mindset shift. This is another sort of multifaceted answer here, but I've been fortunate enough to test out a lot of new camera gear from different brands, all that kind of stuff. And I quickly realized just how great the gear is that I've already got. and how it's got to a point where it doesn't matter what you buy, you're going to get great results. Now, there's trade-offs with everything. Some cameras have better in-body image stabilization, which I favor over like full uncropped 4K 50 or 60p with terrible IBIS. It all comes down to your use case. If you're on a tripod like this, shooting a shot like this, it doesn't matter what you're using. This GH7 is doing a great job in this position, and I can let it run. I know I'm recording, it's got the tally light there, and I'm good to go. But the difference now between like Micro Four Thirds, APS-C, and full frame is far less wide than it was sort of 4 or 5 years ago, or even 3 years ago, whatever. It's just come so far, and all of these cameras are great. I would argue I could use, in place of this, any of the cameras from the GH5 and get a very similar looking shot. Sure, the dynamic range might be a bit different, but once you set up your cameras and you're good to go, then you're good to go. So now it's all about what are the tools that I can use for a particular shoot that makes the most sense for me. Now, in my guitar studio, which I might actually do a run through with you at some point, because I think it's kind of relevant to this conversation, I've got a 4-camera multi-camera setup in there. All those cameras are the same. I've got 4 S5 Mark IIs, and my B-roll camera in there is this, the G9 Mark II, which I was using today outside for some photography. So yeah, that's my setup in there. I've got a 5th camera, which I use for all my handheld stuff, and the rest of those cameras are set up in a way that just works for that studio, and everything matches. I can copy settings from one camera to the next. The white balance will be identical. I've got all matching lenses. It just makes a whole lot of sense. And anytime I'm looking for, B-roll, Micro Four Thirds is great. I actually get more in focus when it comes to Micro Four Thirds with the aperture set the same. So that's really cool. It allows me to get really great product B-roll, and I can get in closer with Micro Four Thirds a lot of the time too. So that's kind of how I feel about it. And the G9 Mark II also has, basically the same color science as the S5 Mark II and X. I'm not even sure it's any different, to be honest. It looks exactly the same. So for me, it's all about consistency, productivity, and knowing what I know about all the new cameras that are out from any brand. Doesn't matter what it is. There would be no reason for me to upgrade that 4-camera multi-camera setup without blowing a whole bunch of money and getting minimal improvements in the end result, if anything, at the end of the day. Now, I watched this pro photographer talk about how he bought the S1R Mark II and why he prefers the colors and look out of the S5 Mark II X. It's all subjective stuff, but he's right. It looked kind of sharper to the eye in a good way, and the colors were popping a little bit more with all settings being equal. So I found that kind of interesting. But yeah, the mindset shift is that you just have to want to do something to make full use out of your gear. And for what I do online, I've been doing this for a long time, I always have an end goal in mind. Always. And that's helped me purpose the gear for some sort of end result. And if you don't have any sort of end result goal in mind, you'll never get there. It's good to have ideas. It's great to have ideas. It's probably the most important thing. But if you're looking at the gear to support that idea, lock that idea in and finish it off. Doesn't matter if you're not posted on YouTube, has no relevance to anything. It's just about getting something finished. At the end of the day, the takeaway is this: anytime I purchase a piece of gear, I look into it and make sure it's the right tool for something that I actually need and want to use on a project, and then I finish that project in a timely manner. There's nothing worse than having whatever it is you're working on, whether that's an album, a documentary, or short film or whatever, just sitting on your hard drive for a year. It means it will never get done. I did that. I did a tribute to JJ Cale after he passed away, and I still haven't finished that album. It's been sitting on the same hard drive now for years. I moved over to Mac and it's just sitting there doing nothing. I could finish that project, but I should have done it earlier, and I didn't. It's my own fault. So make things happen. That's my takeaway. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoy this podcast. It's all off the cuff. I have no notes other than the question which was on the screen here. Let us know what you think of the image quality of what you're looking at right now. So this is the GH7 and the new Secret Micro Four Thirds autofocus lens. Look at this. We've got autofocus. That's a cheap, inexpensive lens. It's small. It'll be coming up in a review, so I need to test that out, and then I'll be showcasing it coming up. But anyway, guys, thank you so much. If you enjoy the podcast, leave a thumbs up. The rest of the episodes will be up in the cards. Is that what they're called? Anyway, thanks again. Catch you soon. See ya.